I don't know why school is just so expensive. You're pushing students away to not want to be smarter. I just don't get the concept of what we do as like you want us to go better America, you want us to go better our country, but you want me
Mhm.
to go pay 25,000 a year for
Yep.
schooling and then pay that back. But I'm trying to help the country, which doesn't make sense. So I wish it was just
Well,
as simple as like reducing the stress because I don't know how it could be reduced in that sense. So I guess I really don't have a answer.
I guess I'm only saying that to say I think that's where the research come in, because what were schools doing beforehand? Because I had the fortune enough to go to UC Berkeley, so it's the University of California school system, and at some point, virtually, if you were from California, going to UC Berkeley was free. If you
Oh
were
wow.
So this is a state school, right? This is a public school, and at some points, you could go to University of California if you were a California resident for virtually like free. Tuition was virtually free. So I'm saying there have been times in America where the
Oh wow.
education to go into universities was virtually free for students. So what happened in between that time into 2025? Welcome everybody. My name is Victor Sandifer. I am the program director for Energy Converters, and this is the Gentic Show. And I have with me a very, very special guest. He hails from Maryville, Indiana. He goes to IU Indianapolis. He's a senior, and he's made double major in secondary education and English studies. This is none other than the good brother Darius Lewis. Let's clap it up for Darius Lewis. How are you, D? How you doing?
Doing all right. Been a long week of student teaching. I'm glad to be on the show. I actually don't have school today, so that's
Mhm.
why this works perfectly for me. They're
Uh-huh.
on a weather flex day, so this day is set aside for if there was a snow day and we had to
Okay.
go to school. But luckily, they kept school open, and so I'm here today.
Oh, nice. How you feeling? How you feeling just about how school is going right now? I know this is your last semester.
Yes, sir.
How you feeling about the wrap up? Like how's wrapping up and you ending your tenure as a undergraduate student? How are you feeling about that?
Wrapping up is intense. Whether you're trying to figure out, I guess, where you're trying to go in like the workforce or graduate school or go get more certificates or the army. So it's been a lot because I think my last semester is really intense because student teaching. So I'm actually student teaching with seventh graders in English all day, Monday through
Mhm.
Fridays, usually. And they're entertaining, they're also cringe, they're they're all types of things. I tell my students that like just by the month, I've only been there for a month. I could write a whole book, multiple books about them. So seventh grade is really interesting.
I remember the seventh grade, and I think middle school was not some of my best moments, and I don't think I liked middle school as much as anything. I really loved that was the only part of my education that I didn't like. I liked elementary, I liked high school, I loved college. Well, I loved high school and I loved college and I loved elementary actually. I don't
Mhm.
know what it is about that middle school, that preteen going into being a teen, but there's something about being a teen that it didn't work for me. I don't know what it was. It's just that I think that was when I was my most defiant. That's when I was really trying to like find myself. I did not like middle school.
Mhm.
Um, but as you, I guess we're talking about that. You're talking about the reflection and reflecting on school, reflecting on your time in school. I assume because you're now in your senior year, you've done a good amount of reflecting on your experience and you have learned a lot in that process of going and being a freshman or being a high school senior, getting ready and prepping to go to college, being excited about that, getting to college, and then going through the experience of college. And I'm pretty sure you're very much full with a lot of wisdom now. And so I wanted to talk to you today about something I think that all students who may be first generation college students may go through or may not understand. which is the hidden cost of education. And so one of the questions I wanted to ask you just to get us started is like when you think about education costs, when we think about education costs, we also often usually focus on like tuition, but what are some of the less obvious expenses that students face?
Um, so one of the, I guess, other expenses, side expenses that is books are books.
Mm,
You have to figure out first. Me personally, I figure out if I need the book after my freshman year. I figured out I should probably wait a couple weeks to realize if I actually need the book or not.
mhm,
I did have one class, I think so far this like out of my whole college career that I really did need every single book because
everything.
it was a young adult literature class and she made us like read I think it was like 7 or 8 books. I can't remember, but
Mhm,
we had to buy every single book because we had to write a paper on the book. So that was one class that I really couldn't get by of just kind of like easing my way through like PDF files on online and trying to find shortcuts. But one of the things is like books is trying to figure out do you really like need the book because sometimes the books you can find parts of it online and that could just get you by because then I mean after you finish the course you're most likely it's probably close to 100% that you won't look at the book ever again. That's just honesty of it. So books is kind of the biggest one, and I actually have to buy a couple books because I was trying to wait to see if I needed books this semester, and I for
uh-huh,
sure definitely need them because I couldn't find no shortcuts for
uh-huh,
them online. But books, and then kind of like transportation because I didn't have a car my first 2 years, so I was kinda hard I mean, I literally lived on campus, but if you have places depending on your major, if you have to go do, like, a practicum, if you have to go do student teaching like me, if you have to go do all that other stuff, so for, like, my first couple of years, I was really saving for a car because I knew by the time I became a junior, I'd have to
uh-huh,
travel to schools and I have to travel right now student teaching, and I didn't want to be somebody else's burden and be like, "Hey, can you pick me up like every single day going into the semester?" So it depends on like your major. If you have to go to a hospital, you have to go to school. If you have to go get hours somewhere else, so investing in a car is a real good thing, and also it's a long term kinda investment for yourself as well.
mhm. So if I'm hearing that right, you're saying that two of the main costs for you is one, like tuition. I mean, not sorry, not tuition. Outside of tuition, those main costs for you is one, the books. So they don't tell you about the books that you got to buy while you're in school, and it can be a lot of books, and they can be relatively expensive. Expensive, and then
Mhm,
you're also saying that as you get older and you get more, I guess, what I would say, more pinpointing in terms of like what you want to major in. A lot of times, like transportation is important as you
mhm,
get older in school because you want to have the opportunity to be able to move around. And like you said, if you're doing more practical work in your later years, you want to make sure you're able to travel to the places where you're working at.
yes, sir.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, that's real. I do have a question that come over, just a general question. How did you what made you want to talk about what made you want to talk about the hidden costs of education? Was there like an experience that you had? What happened, or what was that reasoning for wanting to talk about those hidden costs in education?
I think it's, when I got to college and, my tuition was paid for, and so after my tuition was paid for, I was like, "Wait, I still gotta come out of more money?"
Hmm.
Like, even though I think my freshman year, I had to take out a loan, that was the only year I had to take out a loan, but the
Oh,
other,
nice. You came
like
out good then.
yeah, the
You're
other
coming
3
out good.
years, which is now, I haven't had to take out a loan, but after, like, everything's calculated, you still have to one of the things is, like, a parking pass that comes with, like, having a car,
Mm.
so last year, my parking pass was, like, 493 dollars for the year, and I was
For the
just
year.
like yeah, for the year, but after you
That's not
come
that bad though. If you think
it's
about it,
not that
it's
it's
not
not
bad.
that bad,
If you
but
break it down by
after
semester.
yeah, I think I parked in a different area this year, so it was only about 280, 290. I just have to walk
Okay.
across the street, but that's because 'cause I'm living in a different area, which is nice, but if you
Okay.
live, um, like in the dorms here, but also closer. I still live in the apartments. They have this close parking here, which is still like a $200-300 difference. I was like, I'd rather walk across the street and pay
Yeah.
$200-300 less than try to park it like in the parking lot over here. So, but I mean, when you get done spending your money, with making sure you got school supplies, when you got making sure you got books, making sure you got like washing liquid for clothes and all that, all
Mhm.
that other stuff, the necessities. You really don't wanna buy a parking pass after you've already spent like
Yeah.
$500 and like that's another $500 on top of everything. I wish it was kinda included in there. So, yeah, it's just like when you get to college, you realize I didn't realize because I had brothers that go to college, but they didn't give me like a blueprint or anything. They were like,
Uh-huh.
"Here, this is what the realities of college is. You're gonna have to buy books that you." They didn't like sit down and tell me how college was gonna be. It's kind of something you have to experience and walk into when you kind of chilling and your
Uh-huh.
professor sends you, please get these three required texts after you didn't spend
Uh-huh.
like $1,500 setting up your room and everything. And you're like, I don't want to buy these books, but it's part of your education. So
So for you, it's just really going through that experience and wanting to be able to make sure that you research that so that you could share with other folks. Is that
mhm.
part of it too? Like wanting to share that information with the Darius coming after you since you felt like your brothers didn't give you the game beforehand.
Yeah, and I threw a couple shots on them on my podcast too, just like, hey,
Hmm.
maybe a couple shots at y'all, but they didn't like give me. I wasn't asking for a blueprint or anything, but it was
Hmm.
kind of like they went to school and they were just in school, and then they came back, had their degree, and I'm sitting there
Hmm.
like, oh, that's cool. I don't know.
Hmm. Yeah, but that's true. There should be a little more of us, pulling as we climb, like as we climb up, pulling those behind us, and that's sharing information because there's nothing new under the sun. And if you could have be less surprised while you're in school, why not give you that game? You know what I mean? Like why not give you the game earlier? So that's really important. I think that's really important because yeah, I never thought about those extra costs as well. Like those books that you were getting. Like I was fortunate enough to have a scholarship, and if I could go back, I would definitely talk to my old self about taking out loans just for the heck of taking them out, just to get the money. I did that a lot,
Oh,
and I really wish I
really?
would have did that. I had a full scholarship, so I didn't have to worry about tuition, and but I ended up in the summertime. So it helped me in some ways, but then it also hurt me in the sense that I took out loans in the summer to take summer classes. So it paid for classes in the school year, but the summer was like on me. And so I would take out the loans, which I really still didn't have to do because I was still relatively a local kid. So
Mhm.
I could have just stayed home. I was just taking the money to be greedy, just to have the extra money. As a college student,
I've
I really
heard.
wish I would have did that. I really
Yeah.
wish I would have did that because I would not have no debt from college had I not did that.
Yeah, I've heard some students just like conversations my freshman year walking around like the dorm area and they're like, "Man, I got like this 5,000 like back." And then
Hmm.
some student was like, "You know you gotta pay that back, right? That's just not
Hmm.
no free money that you just say, 'Hey, I'm gonna take
Hmm.
5,000.'" Then they put interest on there if you don't pay it back in enough a certain amount of time. So
Yep.
it felt good in the moment. I made sure I
Yes.
never took out loans when I didn't have to, even though I still like qualify for some, and it looked real tempting. All I had to do was hit accept and put the amount in there,
Hmm.
and it
Yep.
go right into my pocket. But I was like, no, I can't. I can't.
Yeah, and so some of it is that I had like a lot of it was me being greedy. Sometimes there were moments where I probably did need the extra money. You know what I mean? So sometimes
Mhm.
I actually did need it, but probably a good amount of those times it was just me wanting to get more money. So I would definitely go back to myself and tell myself, no, don't do it. But that kind of brings me to another question that I had. For you or anyone else that have there ever been any moments where you had to kind of make a tough decision around like costs that you have, like hitting costs in college? Like, did you have to choose between paying for something and then paying for something else, and you had to prioritize what was most important? Have you had any of those experiences, or do you know anyone who's had any of those experiences when it comes to like hidden costs? Like a hidden cost just coming like, oh, I didn't realize I needed to pay for this when it comes to being a college student, and now I saved this for this, but I now I got to decide. which one is more important? Should I pay for this or should I pay for that?
Hmm. I don't know anybody particularly, but for me, I've had always been caught off guard about what needed to be like paid for, but I also got refunds as well, so I was able to
Mhm.
use that, but I know people get refunds too, and they kinda blow that off within, like, the semester or the few months.
Yeah.
I can tell you, like, there have been multiple times where I've had my refund sitting, and I'm sitting there like, I really wanna spend this on something because
Mhm.
I didn't need anything, but I just
Mhm.
really want to spend it on something because 'cause I'm young, and I know, like,
Mhm.
when I get older, I won't be able to do what I want all the time with my money because there's gonna be responsibilities and all that stuff, but there's been multiple times where I'm sitting there like, I should I should use this money and spend it on something just because, but I don't. I think I do a pretty good job of saving that money because I do know after definitely my first year was when I was like, "This is I need to save the money that I have going in through the school year because I don't know what could come up, what I might need, if I might need, like, medicine, if I might need
Mhm.
books," because I'm away from home, so if I need this
Mhm.
stuff I can just go get it and things like that. So I would encourage people to if you do get a refund or if you have money that you or set aside a set amount of money for the year and kind of just dig from it when you need it because that's kind of what I do. So if I need books, if I need extra stuff, I can just pull from it and I don't feel bad about actually going into like my actual checkings or something like that or spending unnecessary money that I already spent because I blew it in like in the first couple of months because I didn't think I needed. So
So how did you avoid that? Like how did you avoid that as a college student, as a new college student, getting refund checks, and it's probably the most money you've seen at one point in time. That's my assumption. Seeing
mhm.
thousands, like becoming a thousandaire overnight, you know, and having like a, a good chunk of money right there at your disposal. How did you navigate not spending that money? Where did that come from for you? Like, how did you beat that? Because most students blow that, like just go straight through it, like including me. I'm most students. So how did you have the wherewithal, have the discipline to be able to not spend that money?
I think it came from growing up at home. So we would buy I think it was rooted within me with at home. So if I didn't think it was a need, I didn't buy it. So that I think that's where the mindset came from with my parents. I mean, they still got us stuff when like Christmas came around and birthday stuff like that, but kind of just not randomly just gifting us items that if we wanted it, be like, oh yeah, you want this, let's just go get it. They never taught us that because that's kind of like a bad mindset to have. And also, I know when people like, as a kid, like, kids don't really have a lot of money either, so I didn't wasn't gifted, like, hundreds of dollars, like, "Hey, just go
Mhm,
spend this," and stuff like that. So, it kinda came from that as well, but I do know some people, it's an opposite where people, they didn't have the money when they were, like, growing up, so and then they get the money when they're older, and now they're like, "I have the money, so I can spend it." I have a cousin, he's not gonna be named, but he has, like a spending problem, and so it's just
mhm,
like 'cause growing up, he wasn't getting money like that, but it also depends on how your parents have raised you. It was like kind of two separate things, kind of
mhm,
teaching you the value of not to just blow your money on everything, but also teaching you to spend it on important things as well. So kind of came from for me personally, it came from like growing up at home because now I'm out here, I'm like, I don't need that. I could go like 2 more weeks without that, or just
mhm,
because I'm trying to save and sacrifice right now so my future is like happy and in a good place. So I'm thinking about how my future is going to look. So I definitely do give credit to like where I grew up at.
mhm. And now that's important. So that's dope that you had, I guess, the wherewithal and had, I guess, the upbringing to be able to know, hey, I probably need to save and don't need to spend this on all these like frivolous things.
Hmm.
And to be just thinking about the future, like that's a dope thing to have at a moment, because I know that for me, I was not thinking about the future. I was thinking about, how do I do this right now? Like, what, this is money in my pocket right now, I'm going to blow it and I'm going to figure it out later. And so to have that self-discipline is super important, and
Hmm.
I commend you for that. Um, do you think? Do you feel like with this idea of hidden costs in education, in particular in higher education, do you feel like do you think like schools, like the schools, like do enough to kind of be transparent about what like attendance is actually going to cost? Do you feel like the schools are actually being transparent?
I don't think so in most cases because they have like student accounts, I'm sure, for like every student. Like this is kind of like the breakdown of the cost, how it's gonna be, but it's not as accurate as it needs to be, only because, like I said, whatever major you pick, like what books, like they should probably put that in there because books is just like a separate cost because you have your tuition and then there's this cost on my Bursar account or one that I use Student Center, and it's like personal stuff. I don't know what it's called, but it's like personal stuff, and it's like an extra $1,000, and I don't even know what that means or where it's going to. There's no like really description of it. It just says like personal. I have to look back at it, and I'm sitting there like, well, where is this cost kind of going to, and where can I make up for it? But I feel like schools don't do a good job, and that kind of deters students from going to college. And so
Hmm.
when they see how much it costs, they're like, "There's no way I can pay for this. I'm not even gonna try to pay for this," because they don't see like a breakdown and how they can manage what money goes where, what they might need to cover, what scholarships can come up and stuff to cover their future
Hmm.
tuition. So I feel like schools don't really do like the greatest job of explicitly saying like, hey, this they have like the general thing, which is tuition, I think like transportation, some other health costs on there, stuff like that. They do a good job of like in a general sense, but like the specific and estimating, which is something I wish all schools had, estimating about around like this might be an extra $300 for books because of the major you're going into. Because
Hmm.
by now professors in the school knows like on average how much students cost or how much
Hmm.
they spend on books. So if you can get that breakdown, put it in a spreadsheet, and then share it out to students so they feel a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more prepared in their first
Hmm.
few semester or their first few weeks of the first semester, then they feel more comfortable continuing college. Whether they're like, I have to spend another like $500-600 on books. All right, college is not for me. I'm dropping
Yeah.
out. So I
Uh-huh.
think the cost is really detrimental because everybody doesn't come to school with money and having money in their pocket. I'm a
Yeah.
resident assistant and RA. My first year, I had a resident. She was moving back home, and this was just in the dorm because it was just too expensive.
Hmm.
It was just really too expensive, like the books and then like tuition. And so she had came and talked to me in the lounge area, and she's like, "Hey, I have to move back home." I'm glad she even told me that because you don't got to tell me. You could just get up and leave, and I don't know
Hmm.
you're gone. But she told me and kept it real, like, "Hey, school is too expensive here. The dorms, like, it's too expensive. Just everything is expensive, and so I have to move
Hmm.
back home where it's a little bit more affordable because I still do want to get my degree."
Hmm. So do you think so if you had to use your creativity, using your brain, what do you think are some like creative ways or some systematic solutions that could kind of help make education financially more accessible to folks?
I think I know every school has like their internal scholarship stuff. So they have the internal scholarship stuff where they go in, you might do like a essay or short essay about like yourself, and then they recommend you for scholarships. But I think the best way to make um, education more financially accessible is pulling scholarships because I always hear they say millions of dollars of scholarship money go untouched every single year. I hear that so much. I've read up on that. I read on it and I've talked about it in my last episode, but nobody's kind of telling people where because scholarships are available to all like in your school within that internal scholarships. But what about the external scholarships? Where can I find those at? What links are actually going to let me apply to it and I'm going to hear back because there's a lot of links out there. Oh, just hit quick apply. You that's
Mhm.
not that's not reliable enough. And so I've ran up on those websites as well. And I'm like, this is not really reliable. So you have to send students external scholarships. There's got to be somebody like kind of in charge of that, especially if they know you don't have scholarships already. Just to send, hey, there's a list of 10 websites that I've looked up on and I've researched. At least apply to three of these so you can get school some paid for, or just somebody send out like just a giant list of external because that's where a lot of the millions of dollars are at, and they say they go untouched, but a lot of people don't know how to actually find them.
So you think the out of all the things you could do to be creative, you think the most creative thing you can do is have a list for scholarships. External scholarships would be the thing to help people be
Yeah,
more
I think
financially.
mhm.
You think so? Do you really think that though? Like, do you think that they're just making more scholarships
Or
known will help the accessibility of school?
I mean, in the
Because does
general
that really does that I feel like that kind of takes the onus off of, I guess, the institution for making it better. It's like, hey, go out there and find some more money from somewhere else. Like, you don't think there's no accountability for it being more financially available? I mean, financially accessible for from the institutions. You think it's just them saying get some other more private money?
I mean, in a general sense, yes, but I guess I see where you're going, like, just I wish it was just as simple as reducing the, like, financial stress of students, because I and personally don't have a solution for what that could look like because I just don't know how the cost. I don't know why school is just so expensive. It's you're pushing students away to not want to be smarter. I just don't get the like the concept of what we do as like you want us to go better America, you want us to go better our country, but you want me
Hmm.
to go pay 25,000 a year for
Yeah.
schooling, then pay that back. But I'm trying to help the country, which doesn't make sense. So I wish it was
Well,
just as simple as like, reducing the stress, because I don't know how it could be reduced in that sense, so I guess I really don't have a answer.
I guess and I'm only saying that to say I think that's where the research come in. Because what were schools doing beforehand? Because I had the fortune enough to go to UC Berkeley, so it's the University of California systems school system, and at some point, virtually, if you were from California, going to UC Berkeley was free. If you
Oh,
were
wow.
So this is a state school, right? This is a public school, and at some points, you could go to University of California if you were a California resident for virtually like free. Tuition was virtually free. So I'm saying there have been times in America where the
Oh, wow.
education to go into universities was virtually free for students. So what happened in between that time into 2025? So that you get what I'm saying? So that's when we talk about like doing research. That's why
Mhm.
I'm saying make sure we're doing more research because that is something that I think you can look at and then you might be able to find something that's more understandable. If that makes
Yeah.
I mean not understandable, something that's more feasible, a better
Mhm.
solution. You might be able to come with something creative. So that's when we talk about doing some research and looking up some articles. It's going to be important to do that because there's some solutions I think that you could come up with creatively.
Mhm. Alright.
Yeah. But as we wrap up, I want to wrap up um, asking, do you have any advice that you would give any students now, like any students going to college? What would be like some of your last parting wisdoms on students who are dealing with those hidden costs and it kind of being difficult for them? What is your advice on navigating these hidden costs for the Darius that's coming up after you?
I would say, um, don't spend your refunds, try to save those, but also if there's a way to I've heard recently where people were going to do like 2 years at community college and then like another 2 years at the kinda like the university colleges because the cost is lower. And that's because the first 2 years is kind of filled with like prerequisites in a way. And so a lot of the students this was like trending at one point where they were saying that their first 2 years they would go to community college up the street, and then the last 2 years they would go to a university just because it's way cheaper and you could take those same classes for less at another university. I did like a small portion of that when I took classes over the summer, last summer, and the classes were 2 classes for $1,100, but if I took it here at my university, it was like 3,000. And
Mhm.
so kinda trying to figure out how you wanna navigate those classes and if it's gonna be cheaper at a community college, because that's where I took it at online. It was community college, it was Ivy Tech, and so I was able to take classes for less rather than take classes here for more. And so if you
Mhm.
can do that, if you feel more comfortable doing classes starting off at a community college and then going to the university level, that could help too because the cost is just there's such a great difference between per credit hour here and per credit hour at a community college. And so like I said, 6 credit hours for $1,100 versus at
Mhm.
my IU Indianapolis, 6 credit hours for like $3,000 or more there's just kind of like that big difference.
Mhm.
So if I could offer that would be great, but also kind of make a plan. I have this binder or I have this notebook where I have all my cost out for the month, every month, just because
Uh-huh.
costs come up. And I also put in an outlier factor of, oh, what if I have to pay for something extra? So I have a
Mhm.
list of, because now I live in an apartment, so I have like groceries, phone bill, car insurance, like all those expenses going on, but also like a what if factor just in case you just set like $100 to the side just in case, $50 just to help level that financial burden, just so you are kind of mentally aware that you might have to take something from that. But I would say, like I said, make that notebook because it really, I look back at it almost every week just to see where I'm at financially and able to continue going.
Got you. And so I think that is important to make sure students kind of got an idea of like their school system and what credits are transferable and which ones aren't, and seeing which ones you could take out of community college as opposed to taking them at your actually school, because it can be significantly cheaper going to a community college. So that's definitely good advice to
Mhm,
kind of creatively, circumvent some of those hidden costs or some of that high fees when it comes to school. Thanks for that. Thank you.
mhm.
Oh, so where can they find you at, Darius? Let them know about your show. Tell them about the show you got. I know you got a show. Tell them about your show, where they can find it at, where they can find you at.
Yeah, so you all can find me. It's called Darius College Steps to Success. It's on YouTube, Spot, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. So I post episodes on there weekly, just about a little bit about it. It's kind of helping students succeed in college. So I want every perspective of how college is. I just created an episode about how to write good scholarship essays last week. So that's how I was able to get like my scholarships on personal experience. I also had an episode about 10 things I wish I knew as a freshman, so on and so forth. So the show is going to be, I'm in the process of having a guest on there from now because I'm gonna be done just me yapping solo here. So I'm
Mhm,
on the process of getting special guests because I don't have all the answers. I don't know everything. And so pulling
mhm,
people's different perspective is what I'm in the process of doing. So if you look through my list when it's finally done, whenever it's done, you may not find an episode that caters to you for like 15 episodes. Then you scroll down episode number 16. Oh, nursing student that's a resident assistant. This one's for me, That's kind
mhm.
of like my end goal of this. So when people are looking through like the entirety of the list, they're like, there's a perspective for everyone. So you can find that on, again, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. It's called Darius College Steps to Success. And then my Instagram is D_Lewis21 with 2 I's. And then also LinkedIn, just my name. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Darius, for your time. Thank you for sharing your experience, and thank you for doing the work that you're doing, because I think that's really important. It's super important for folks to, especially like I was in school some years ago, and every year things are changing in school. So the fact that you're like still at the tail end of your undergraduate career, and you're saying, hey, I want to share information for students coming up after me, I think that's really commendable and super important. Thank you for doing that work. We're going to continue to do more research, and we're going to get more information, because I definitely want you to push a little more in certain directions when it comes to these hidden costs in education. I think you will. I know you will. I know you're bright enough. So thank you for that. I appreciate you. Thank you all for listening and tuning in. Again, I'm Victor. That's Darius. And this is the Agentic Show. And this is Energy Converters. Appreciate y'all.